Imagine leaving dry land behind. And I don't mean just for a week-long vacation, but permanently. Picture this, a massive floating metropolis, complete with its own schools, hospitals, even an airport, just constantly circumnavigating the globe. Sounds like pure science fiction, right? Well, the engineering ambition to actually build a city that floats has been brewing for over a century now. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the absolutely fascinating journey of how human ambition took us from early ocean transport all the way to the mind-boggling vision of tomorrow's megaships.
We're looking at the incredible evolution of ocean liners. We'll trace the lineage of these colossal vessels, checking out the fierce rivalries that pushed the absolute boundaries of engineering, the tragic events that completely reshaped maritime safety, and eventually the staggering multi-billion-dollar blueprints for a literal floating city.
Here's our roadmap for the day. We'll kick things off with the dawn of the ocean liners, move right into the luxury and machinery of the Titanic, see how tragedy sparked vital safety reforms, explore the whole shift to modern cruising, and wrap up with the staggering concept of the Freedom Ship. All right, let's jump right in. Section 1, Dawn of the Ocean Liners, the race for the seas.
So, throughout the 19th century, maritime innovation was moving at a seriously rapid pace, mainly because shipping lines were locked in this intense, cutthroat competition. In 1880, the SS Ravenna becomes the very first ship built with a total steel superstructure, a real game-changer. Just 9 years later, the SS Valletta brings electric lights to the high seas. Then, jumping to 1900, a guy named Albert Ballin, the director of the Hamburg-America line, totally shifts the paradigm. He designs the Prinzessin Victoria Louise. And what's special here is that this was the first vessel built exclusively for luxury cruising, not just getting from A to B. This fierce rivalry, especially between Cunard and the White Star Line, pushed companies to build bigger, faster, and way more luxurious ships. And that whole race culminated in 1912 with the one and only RMS Titanic.
Moving on to Section 2, Titanic, Luxury and Machinery, Above and Below Deck.
See, the White Star Line wanted to completely eclipse its rival, Cunard, by offering just unmatched scale and opulence. As this quote points out, the Titanic stood as arguably the largest and most finely appointed liner of its era. The sheer ambition represented the absolute peak of industrial progress back in 1912. For the first-class passengers, this wasn't just a trip, it was a lavish, 5-day continuous party. But, throwing a party like that requires some serious, hidden industrial muscle.
Now, what's really interesting here is the stark contrast between the passengers living it up and the raw engineering making it all happen. Above deck, you had ultra-feminine, Edwardian high fashion. We're talking first-class ladies changing clothes at least 4 times a day. They'd go from tailored suits for breakfast to tea gowns in the afternoon and completely different formal dresses for every single dinner. But down below, in the grimy, unseen heart of the ship, an industrial marvel was grinding away. The ship was powered by this massive generating plant with 4 400-kilowatt engines, churning out 16,000 amps of current. All that juice powered advanced tech, like electrically operated watertight doors, and these massive refrigerating machines built in England, which literally kept all those lavish dinners perfectly fresh.
To really put that extreme luxury into perspective, get a load of this number. Over $3.5 million. That is the modern equivalent dollar amount of a luggage claim filed against the White Star Line by just one first-class passenger, Charlotte Drake Cardezza. Her 18-page claim included 14 trunks, 4 bags, a jewel case, and a packing case. I mean, it perfectly captures the absolute sheer scale of wealth and lifestyle these liners catered to.
Next up, Section 3, Tragedy Sparks Safety Reforms. Lessons learned the hard way. As we all know, all the luxury in the world cannot replace safety. The Titanic was famously hailed as unsinkable when she left Southampton. But unfortunately, overconfidence and complacency played a huge role in her downfall. People literally just hadn't imagined that she could go down. So when the ship collided with an iceberg 340 miles off the Canadian coast, it completely exposed some fatal gaps in maritime safety. And that disaster necessitated a complete top-to-bottom overhaul of international regulations.
Let's take a look at how things changed. These new regulations fundamentally altered ship design and communication. Before 1912, radio operators only worked intermittently. But after the disaster, the Wireless Telegraphy Act required vessels to maintain a 24-hour wireless watch, basically ensuring distress calls would be heard immediately, no matter the time of day.
Also, before 1912, lifeboat capacity was tragically insufficient. Afterward, it was strictly mandated that ships carry enough lifeboats for absolutely everyone on board, no exceptions. And structurally, the British Board of Trade mandated taller bulkheads and much better pumping systems to make hulls far more resilient to flooding.
So the really crucial takeaway here is that these incredibly hard-learned lessons were officially codified in the 1914 SOLAS, or Safety of Life at Sea Agreement. They formalized mandatory lifeboat drills, set strict international standards for crew training, and gave authorities way more power for compliance inspections. And you know what? These are the exact rigorous maritime safety standards that still protect people at sea today, overseen by organizations like HM Coast Guard.
All right, Section 4, the shift to cruising, from transport to entertainment.
So zooming forward to the 1960s, large passenger jet aircraft completely disrupted the whole industry. Travelers suddenly swapped ships for planes for intercontinental trips because, well, it was way faster. To survive, shipping companies had to totally pivot from transport to entertainment. The Queen Elizabeth II, or QE2, actually pioneered one-class cruising, where every passenger got the same quality facilities, and they started advertising the ocean crossing as a vacation in itself. Fast forward to the late 1980s, and we see the birth of the megaship with the Sovereign-class vessels. These bad boys introduce massive, multi-story glass atriums and whole decks devoted exclusively to private balcony cabins.
Now you might be wondering, why didn't they just use the cool old ocean liners for these new vacations? Well, the logic is actually pretty simple. The same exact engineering that made those classic ocean liners so fast and capable in the rough North Atlantic made them absolutely terrible for leisurely tropical cruising. For one, they burned an insane amount of fuel. Also, their deep drafts, which is how deep the hull sits in the water, meant they literally couldn't enter shallow, picturesque tourist ports. Plus, their cabins were originally designed strictly to cram in as many passengers as possible for transport, not for spacious, breezy vacation comfort. The ships simply had to evolve.
And that brings us to Section 5, Freedom Ship, floating cities, a city that never stays in one place. Let's just address the elephant in the room right off the bat. $15 billion. That is the estimated price tag for the proposed Freedom Ship project. It's an idea originally dreamed up in the late 90s by engineer Norman Nixon, and it's currently championed by CEO Roger Gooch. Finding that immense pile of cash is for sure the biggest hurdle. But if they can pull it off and get it funded, it would become the world's very first true city at sea. And guys, the scale of this vision is just mind-blowing. To put it into perspective, the absolute largest cruise vessels operating today, like the Icon of the Seas, sit at around 365 meters long. The Freedom Ship would completely dwarf them. It is designed to be 1.8 kilometers long. That's over 4 times longer. It would be 250 meters wide, rise 25 stories above the waterline, and have an estimated gross tonnage of 2.3 million. It's literally so massive it wouldn't even be able to enter any existing port in the world. It would just have to anchor offshore while ferries shuttle people back and forth to the mainland. Crazy, right? This isn't just about taking a vacation. These amenities are designed to create a completely self-sustaining community that just slowly circumnavigates the globe every 2 to 3 years. The vessel is envisioned to hold 80,000 people at a time, including 50,000 permanent residents. To even get around a ship this humongous, there'd be an internal rapid transit network. We're talking real city infrastructure, residential neighborhoods, schools, banks, and a fully equipped research hospital. For fun, the blueprints feature a 15,000-seat sports stadium and landscaped eco-parks. Oh, and perhaps the absolute craziest part? The roof would act as an aviation deck, complete with a runway for small private jets and 8 helipads. Now, practically speaking, powering a vessel of this scale pushes the very boundaries of maritime science. Experts point out that keeping the lights on for a 2.3 million ton vessel full of 80,000 people and a whole city's worth of infrastructure, that requires unprecedented energy resources. In fact, some naval experts suggest that nuclear propulsion might honestly be the only practical long-term solution to make this whole shebang actually work. So from the totally steel hull of the SS Ravenna back in the 1880s, all the way to the $15 billion blueprints of the modern Freedom Ship, human ambition on the ocean just hasn't stopped growing. It really makes you wonder what the future actually holds for us at sea. So I'm going to leave you with this thought. If the Freedom Ship finally secures its funding and actually gets built, would you pack up, abandon land, and live permanently on a floating city in international waters? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep your curiosity afloat.